I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, I am talking to a woman who is the author of a powerful book entitled Called to Help the Poor and Needy. Her name is Patricia Said Adams, and she joins us live right now. Patricia, thank you so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. And call me Pat.
I'll call you Pat, absolutely. And you can call me Logan, of course.
Okay.
Loved your book. It's an important book. We chatted before. It's both timely and timeless. Tell me a little bit about the inspiration behind Called to Help the Poor and Needy.
Well, a couple of years ago, I felt like God was calling me to look into this topic and do a video about it, like a 20-minute video. And as I got into it and I realized how many verses in the Bible there were and, just how complicated it was, I realized that a 20-minute video just wouldn't work, that it really needed to be a book. And so that was the beginning. Then I heard a minister, I forget his name right now, but talk about how he'd been a pastor for so many years and didn't realize that there were 2,000 verses in the Bible about helping the poor and needy. And he was shocked. And I thought, oh my God, well, me too, because I didn't know either until I got into this.
Absolutely. One of the verses from the Bible that sticks with me is perhaps a problematic Bible for those who are wondering what they should do for the poor and needy. And that is, teach a man to fish, he fishes for a lifetime. Give a man a fish, he fishes for a day. So that's kind of the eye of the needle that we have to thread, empowering people while not disempowering them. Am I on the right track here? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think that we walk with them through all of this. We get to know them. We get to know how they got to be where they are. We want to know what they value in their lives and what they would do if they had the resources to do it. And we walk with them, helping them achieve what it is that is so important to them, but that they can't afford.
And it's becoming less affordable all the time. I mean, if you look at our current situation here in 2022, things are incredibly expensive. You talk a lot about immigrants in your book and the fact that they're hard pressed. Tell me about some of the challenges they face when you have them despised by some people, ridiculed by others, criminalized by others still. Tell me about the challenges that new immigrants to this nation face right now.
Well, I think one is that they can be deported at any moment. There's no security in living here if you're not fully a citizen. And until you can achieve that, you're nowhere, or you live in nowhere's land. And you may be able to work a little bit and, do stuff, but you're kind of a criminal just waiting to be caught. And I think that must be so hard to live with. And yet there are people at our border all the time trying to come here. And there's jobs we need people to fill. I mean, all kinds of jobs, trucking jobs. People are we can't even get the goods to ourselves, our stores and stuff, so that we can buy them that would make things cheaper. Because there are all these jobs going wanting, and we're not trying to fill them with the immigrants who are wanting to come.
And that's really a tragedy, because you have a group of hardworking, industrious, energetic people who are looking to come here, not for a handout, but to contribute and to make America better, like all of the immigrants who came before them. So that becomes a catch-22.
Well, and look at, I lived for a long time in California, and the Central Valley is a huge agricultural, wonderful land. And those workers were all Latinos. But they lived under that threat that they could be deported at any time. And they were paid very little. And, there was a man named Cesar Chavez who managed to organize and bring attention to what they were going through. And yet here are the people who are producing our food that we need, and we just aren't aware of them and their needs and what we could do to help them thrive in this country. It's just interesting to me that we're kind of blind to other people who are not like us.
Yeah. Our empathy sometimes doesn't extend to people that we can't relate to. And unfortunately, some people can't relate to the people who are literally forced to live in the shadows.
Yeah. Well, and our empathy doesn't extend to people who are different from us. We don't really care. And even if I have lots of friends who are of different races, if I'm not working for this country to embrace people of all different backgrounds and possibilities in their lives and the poverty and all of that, then what am I really doing? I'm just living with the way things are and it's fine for me. But what about the other people?
And that's an important aspect. By doing for others, by empowering the poor and needy, you, in a circumvented sort of way, you're helping yourself, because you're making yourself better, you're making your life fuller, and you're contributing to this mission that we're all on, or this journey that we're all on, is to leave this world a better place.
Yeah, so true. Yeah.
It seems like you did a lot of work looking at the New and Old Testament when it came to writing this book. Tell me a little bit about the time spent with the Bible, reviewing the verses, what kind of journey that was for you, and how that helped you with your faith and with your mission.
Well, I think what was most interesting of all was that it wasn't just about feeding the hungry, but treating people well. Like slavery in biblical times was mostly debt slavery. And so a person would commit to work for the person they owed money to for a certain amount of years. And then he was supposed to be freed. And the owner of that property was then to provide him with enough to get started again, to treat him well. And not just when he was working for him, but also afterwards. And I thought that was very interesting, because it took it beyond just, oh, well, here's some food, or clothing, or whatever you need, but to treat him like one of us. And I thought that was really beautiful. It's about justice, not just giving food and clothing and stuff to people who need it, but it's about treating them in the justice system really well. And I think that's where our country also falls down. Like 40% of our prisoners are Black people, but they're only like 12% of our population. So are they such bad criminals that that's their nature, or are we not giving them justice too?
It seems to me like our criminal justice system needs to be reinvented, because we don't have equal justice under the law. If some people have the opportunity to hire armies of lawyers and defend themselves, and other people get the lowest rung attorney you could ever imagine, who's doing it on a shoestring budget, perhaps out of the goodness of their heart, or perhaps they're a failed lawyer. And that's the person and the people that we see incarcerated to these proportions that you talk about. And that's inherently unfair. Do you agree?
Or we look at drug selling and stuff in Black neighborhoods is horrible. And then we'll say about a white guy who's doing it, a young white guy, oh, you know, he'll be okay. He's
partying. Yeah. Yeah.
And you think, what?
Exactly.
And it's true with white collar crime too. We don't really investigate a lot of white collar crimes.
Right.
We're into criminal acts, drugs, particularly, you know, stuff that's not normal in our society.
Right.
And then the white collar criminal gets away with a lot.
That kind of points back to that disparity in the criminal justice system. The cops in Greenwich, Connecticut aren't going to kick in the door of a 17-year-old male who they suspect is on drugs because they know there will be a price to pay, that his father has access to a lawyer, that his mother might have political influence in the town. Whereas you have somebody who's living in the Bed-Stuy section of Brooklyn, does get their door kicked in, is found with drugs, is arrested, and then their life is turned upside down from that point on. You're forever a convicted felon, perhaps.
Well, and there's the 3 strikes and you're out law, which means that you can be arrested for drug possession 3 times and be sent to prison for life. Is that fair? Is that justice? I mean, when somebody else is murdering people and, you know, maybe gets prison for life too, that doesn't seem to be equal to me.
What I find interesting is that people admit that the justice system is extremely flawed. Look at the debate over the Supreme Court.
Oh.
If justice is justice, if the law is the law, what difference does it make who's appointed to the Supreme Court of the United States? Well, obviously it makes all the difference in the world, which is why you see some of the decisions being handed down right now in some cases. And whether you fall on the left or whether you fall on the right, you have to realize that unfortunately we're at the mercy of a select few people, and they're the ones who are in many ways, you know, structuring our existence.
Yeah. Well, you know, just to talk about the abortion issue that's come up in the Supreme Court, you know, in overturning Roe versus Wade, the people who need abortions often are the poor and needy, and they can't cope with what's happening in their lives. So the abortion seems like, oh, well, I'll just get rid of this child and then I can go on working and doing what I need to do to just survive. But where's the feeling for what they're going through? Where's the forgiveness for even wanting that solution? Where's the help that might enable them to keep the child and yet go on with their lives still? It's like we judge those people and then, well, we're not going to help them. I mean, they're doing what's wrong. Right.
Yeah, I don't think anybody has an abortion lightly. I don't think it's a situation that anybody wants to be in. I don't think it's a decision anybody wants to make. And I think the point you're making is if we're not supporting this person in their life with all of the hardships that we're going through, who are we to say what they can do to this life they could bring into the world or not bring into this world?
Well, and it's like they're the problem. You know, we don't do anything wrong, but they do all kinds of things wrong. And I haven't yet met any perfect people. So
other than me.
Oh, okay, Logan.
Now I've broken your streak. Other than me. Absolutely. Absolutely. You have a chapter in your book called Who Are the Needy? Who, in your opinion, are the needy?
Well, the homeless, for one. People who aren't paid well for their jobs. Like one statistic that's really just astounded me is that CEOs' salaries have gone up since the 70s, 1,000%. The average worker's pay has gone up 11.5%. Now, to me, the people who are the average workers are the poor and needy. They're not being paid. They're not getting health insurance, you know, all the benefits that people who are on higher levels get. They don't get help with education. They don't get help with just anything.
You know, I find as workplaces become more corporate, they become less human.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I remember growing up in the 1960s and the 1970s, we would chat with the clerk in the deli. We would talk to the woman selling shoes at Buster Brown. Now, everybody has a very compartmentalized role. They're, you know, working behind the counter of a Chick-fil-A, and all they do is enter the order. They're not entering the order, gathering your food, or preparing your food in some cases, you know, like you would in an old-fashioned deli. And this idea of turning people into just cogs in the wheel that are replaced in many cases by serve yourself, here's an iPad and tap on it. And even the clerks in the grocery store, everything has become less personalized and less human. Do you understand what I'm getting at, and do you agree?
Yeah, you know, I've lived a long time. I was born in 1941. So I would say the biggest change in our country is the loss of community, the loss of the sense that, you know, just because you don't earn as much as I do, that you're not valuable, that, you know, well, I don't care to talk to this person who's helping me. I mean, they're just doing their job. I mean, it's more, since the 80s, to me, the materialism has taken over. And it's meant that I'm more interested in what I can buy and how much I can get. And I'm not interested in other people. I'm interested in my group, my family, my friends, but the rest of them, you know, just aren't important.
Yeah.
And I think that's a huge loss. There was much more, you know, after World War II, there was much more of a sense of community in our country, that people knew their neighbors. The CEOs lived in town with their workers. They saw them every day, you know, at church or in the stores, but now it's all international corporations and CEOs that sit on the top of a huge, uncaring, all they care about is their profits and the CEO's salaries. And, you know, we've lost so much of that sense of neighborhood, the sense that, you know, well, you know, in this state, we do things this way, and that we're together in any way. And I think that's the saddest thing about our country today.
Especially, like you said, once these CEOs become like titans or monarchs, there is really this disconnect from the worker. They can't relate at all anymore. When you have, you know, the CEO of Amazon or the CEO of Tesla, who are literally the richest people in the world, who are building, you know, spaceship monuments to themselves, rather than using those resources, like you said, to help the poor and needy. What are your thoughts on this entrepreneurial space race we have going on right now, where, you know, you have all, you know, Richard Branson, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos building, you know, rocket ships for themselves to go up into outer space, which is fine on one hand, but like you said, we have people who are truly needy in this country. We have people who are hungry. We have people who are unhoused. We have people who are uneducated. And if you talk about giving any one of those things, an education, housing, money, to people who haven't, quote unquote, worked for it, well, then you are absolutely demolished by one side of the political spectrum and labeled as a communist, a socialist, somebody who's going to destroy our country. What do you think about those types of changes in our political climate right now, where the conversation we're having right now would fall on deaf ears to about half the country. They wouldn't listen because they would say, you know what, he's a communist, she's a communist, and that's it.
Well, we've been sold a bill of goods about socialism and communism. You know, McDonald's workers in Denmark make $22 an hour. They have 5 weeks of vacation every year and a number of benefits that our McDonald's workers make, maybe 10, and with almost no benefits and probably not a full-time job that would support them. You know, see, I think the CEOs have taken the money that should have gone to the workers and put it on in their own pockets. And so big deal, they can fly to the moon. Wonderful, but so what? I mean, really, that Jeff Bezos has the biggest yacht ever built and can't get into some ports because of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't feel sorry for the guy.
Exactly.
But you know, it's that me culture. It's all about me and what I can get done and what I can take from my workplace. And you know, who cares about the other people? It's not about them. It's about me, because I'm the most important person around here.
Exactly. And this whole digital age with Facebook and Instagram and TikTok, where people are constantly photographing themselves, has exacerbated the issue for sure. Let's talk a little bit about homelessness. I think it's interesting that in cities like New York City, 40% of the office space is unoccupied and probably will go unoccupied for the foreseeable future, if not forever. I don't hear any proposals from the right or the left to retrofit these skyscrapers in New York City and turn them into housing for people. I mean, it only makes sense that the commercial real estate market, it has a glut right now. Let's retrofit these offices and house some people who are living on the street.
Well, I've read about Houston, which is our 4th largest city, Houston, Texas. And they have housed 25,000 homeless people in the last 10 years through a consortium of corporate and state or city and charitable resources. They've gotten together and made it a plan not to shelter the homeless, but to actually move them into apartments of their own. And they don't care about whether the person is an addict or not. They figure once he gets settled or she gets settled into a permanent place, then they can deal with those issues. And they've reduced homelessness by 63% over the last 10 years, which is huge.
Right.
And but I think it takes the corporate interests who maybe own those rooms to open up to helping. It takes, you know, a consortium of people to care about it, to bring the issue to the public, to bring the issue to the corporations and the charities, and to work together, which is not easy.
No.
But it can be done. And you know, we have far too many homeless in this country. I think it's like 300,000 plus homeless. I write a weekly blog and on Facebook, and I had a reader for a long time who had been homeless, and he was a vet, and he talked about living in his car and using public restrooms to clean up so he could go to work every day. And he said it was so interesting because he almost never had anybody come up to him and want to talk to him. People just weren't interested in him. And it took a very unusual person to even approach him. And he was just very grateful for it. But what happens is they don't feel valued at all. They have no worth in our society. They're a drain on our society, rather than just being human beings who are caught in some sort of cycle of problems that they can't solve by themselves. Or, we could forgive them for the choices they've made. We can forgive ourselves for the bad choices we've made too.
Mm.
But when people end up without enough money to have housing or to feed themselves, or just to do normal things. And like you said, today, inflation is food and gasoline. I was in California recently, and one of the tanks of gas I bought cost me $100. And I was just like,
I know.
I mean, who can afford that, really?
I mean, lots of people work all day to make $100.
Yeah.
Even right now, if you're making $10 or $15 an hour, you're probably not even bringing home $100 a day. And if it's costing that to fill up your car, it's insane.
Well, and how do you get around this country without a car?
You can't. They don't even build sidewalks anymore.
No.
If you don't have a car, you absolutely don't have a place in society. It's very, very difficult. In your book, you talk about, and I think you were kind of hinting at this before, is when you talked about people not seeing those people in need, and it's, do we see Jesus in each other? Tell me a little bit about why you write about this ability to see Jesus in other people.
Well, towards the end of Matthew, and I forget which chapter it's in, 26 or something, maybe 28, Jesus talks about the sheep and the goats. And the sheep are people who help other people, and the goats are ones who just ignore them. And he says to both groups, he says, if you help this person, you are helping me. And if you don't help that person, you're not helping me. So he is so identified with each of us, so much a part of who we are. You could even talk about it as the indwelling spirit of God is in each of us, whether we know it or not. But to Jesus, it's, you're not serving him if you're not helping other people. And that puts a whole different light on it, because I think what he's asking us to do is to see him, see the divine in every single person there is. And, that's a huge challenge for us, to think that every person has goodness in them. Every person is to be loved, to be forgiven. But that's what he was preaching all throughout his life, was take care of the poor and needy, help them. That's what he did. He helped the unfortunate, the people who were tossed out of society and couldn't participate. He
took care of the lepers. He took care of the lepers.
The lepers, right. Yeah. All the people that, we just kind of ignore if we go on about our lives as if they don't matter.
Exactly.
But that was what he taught us to do by what he did. And then he taught us by saying, that's me you're ignoring. Well, that's a very powerful message.
Absolutely.
If we take that in, we have to think about that other person, no matter what they've done in their lives, as valuable and as a real human being. I learned a lot reading, I don't know if you've ever read Father Gregory Boyle.
I have not.
He runs a charity in East Los Angeles, which is big gang territory, called Homeboy Industries and Homegirl Industries. And for the last 30 years, he's he's gone out on the streets at night, late at night, 2:00 in the morning, to meet gang members and get to know them. And eventually he invites them into this charity to work. And when they get to the charity, it's not like, oh, you have to be here at 8 o'clock in the morning and work till 5 and, all these rules. They start with love,
Mm.
because what he's found is the gang members have never been loved.
Mm.
They've been abused. They've been traumatized. Their parents were alcoholics or indifferent, but they're just people who have been injured by life. And so after a year or so of this love, they're ready to go to work and to do what normal people are doing. And he tells story after story in his books about why they are gang members, what in each person's story has brought them to this place. And I just learned so much because I thought, oh my God, I had no idea. I thought they were just mean people. But there's a reason, and there's a reason that can be tackled in the right way if we're willing to help them.
Exactly.
So, I mean, I've read a lot about trauma, and I think we all have it in some aspect or another. Like I read one book that said even the white settlers who came here from Europe were traumatized. They had brought trauma from their generations of ancestors. A lot of them came because they were poor. Like William said, one of my ancestors came here in 1725. He was sent here because he had stolen a shovel. Well, that was punishment. But all I could think of was, well, probably he's been a serf in a very structured society, and serfs in the Middle Ages and beyond were not treated well. So he came here traumatized and passed it down. And each of our families have been like that.
Yeah.
And you just think, oh my God, there's a reason for our judgment. There's a reason for our prejudice. There's a reason for our mistreating. And when we can get to that point where we can actually deal with our own stuff, then there's a chance for us to really love, to see another person as valuable, even if we don't know who they are, or they're not like us, they haven't lived like us at all. Doesn't matter. We just see things so differently when we deal with our own stuff that's in us.
Absolutely.
And, it's powerful.
It is.
And it affects who we are. And we don't have to live that way.
Right.
So,
it's as you speak, it reminds me of the saying from the Bible that what you do to the least of my brothers, that you do unto me. Right. And I remember this stuff as you speak, because I went to Catholic school growing up, and we were learned about the New Testament and the Bible every day. We went to church the first Friday of every month. We went to church every Sunday and listened to the priest. And we have become so secularized in this country that my frame of reference is the New Testament. And I think about what Jesus would say and what Jesus would do. But so many people don't anymore. I think including my own grown children. They didn't go to Catholic schools. I brought them to church occasionally. They don't have that same Christian mindset. And there are great people, of course, in every religion, and every religion has something to contribute. But certainly, whether you view Jesus Christ as the Son of God or as a prophet, like the Muslims do, there is such value in knowing the word of Christ.
Yeah, sometimes you have to get over what you've been taught too. Like I grew up in a hellfire and damnation church, and by the time I was like 20, God was a raven sitting on my shoulder, ready to zap me for anything I did wrong. And a good part of my life has been in healing that very, 12 years of teaching. And because I don't believe that God is that way. I believe that God's a God of love, forgiveness, justice, mercy. But he's not there just waiting to zap us for
Right.
everything we do. I don't believe that.
Yeah, I wasn't raised thinking we had a God who would smite us either. The God that I was raised to believe in and to follow was a benevolent God who was there to guide you and to help you. But I guess the point was, while you say religion can be a double-edged sword, the fact that we have so little religion nowadays in our society, perhaps that's leaving people without the conscience they need to see Jesus in other people, or to see the divine in other people, or see that commonality in other people. Even if a person looks different from you, speaks different from you, has a different background, and might have problems you don't.
But also, that's seeing ourselves with love. It's not just the other person. I don't think you can love other people or value them if you don't value who you are, if you don't love and forgive yourself for everything that's gone on in your life. For me, it took an act of will. If God can love me and forgive me, then surely I can love and forgive myself.
Mm.
But that was just a decision I made. I don't know, 50 years into my life.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Took me a long time to figure it out, but
Yeah.
finally got there.
Tell me a little bit about who your target audience is, why you wrote this book, what type of change you're hoping to enact with it.
Well, I wrote it for a Christian audience,
Mhm.
and I think there's so much belief in God, but not as much following God. And we can believe in God and think he's almighty and loving and all of that, and not change one thing in our lives
Mm.
because we've got the right beliefs and we're good. And all those other people are, not. And but if we believe so deeply in God and in Jesus Christ and follow what they've taught, then we have a whole different life opening up to us. And I think we're all, like this book says, called to help other people in some way. Now, I'm a writer, I'm not an activist, but I try to write things about Jesus and God that are helpful to expanding people's viewpoints, because I'm a spiritual director. So everything I think about is, well, how do we live this life that Jesus taught us about? And that's the lens through which I write. And that's what's come to me as my purpose.
Mm.
And I think we each have a purpose, and it often has to do with what suffering we've had in our lives. Like the alcoholic who counsels people who are coming into AA, sponsors. Or I read about a woman who had raised a disabled girl, her child. And finally, at the age of 35, the girl had graduated from college. And then she went on to help other families with disabled children because of all that she had learned in that process. And I think there's something that we can give back to others, to this world, to help, to serve, to love, to forgive, for justice, for mercy, because of what we know, what we've gained in our lifetime in getting through some of the most difficult things we ever had to do.
Mm.
And in this country, we seem to think that we shouldn't have any problems, or we shouldn't have any challenges, that life should just go the way we want it to go.
Exactly.
And how often does that happen? I mean,
Exactly. I actually heard a priest one time during a sermon and I've heard it since. Other people have said the same thing, but this was the first time I heard it. It was down in Savannah, Georgia, at the beautiful Catholic church down there. And I remember him saying, life is hard. And once you accept that it's hard, it becomes easier. And I found that very, very true. I mean, because life is hard. And if you do accept that there are challenges that we all face, that we're all needy, as you put it in your book, for one thing or another, whether it's love or community or spirituality or connection. I mean, particularly during this time of the pandemic, where we've been so isolated, who doesn't have a need in their heart and a need in their soul?
None of us, I don't think. I don't know. It's for me, the challenges in my life have become the lessons I'm to learn. And I think of this life as a school that will teach us how to love if we're willing to accept what happens to us and to work with it and figure out, well, what was that supposed to teach me? What was I supposed to learn from? Well, my husband died when I was 59 and he was 60. And, that was the most traumatic thing I've ever been through. And yet I felt so supported through the whole thing, so loved and cared for by God, that it wasn't like I raced through it or it was easy, but it just worked. And I never got mad at God for taking him at that time. And I grieved once he died. I mean, I grieved a lot for a couple of years, but it was just, this happens. This is happening to me now. And now what am I going to do? And always before that, I had to know why something was happening before I could ever give consent to it. So I was like, why?
Right.
And I finally realized that the why didn't matter. It was already in my life, and I better just get on with it and see, what I needed to do. So I've gotten beyond that. Life has to be good, and do what I come to me as I want it to come. And,
A prayer that has always brought me peace has been, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change the things I cannot accept, and the wisdom to know the difference. And that, of course, is the hard part, knowing the difference between that you can change and that you can't change.
Yeah. It's it's a big challenge.
It is a big challenge. One of the challenges we have for all of us as Americans living in this country is we do have the power to better other people's lives. If you have some money, you can give money. If you have energy, you can work. If you have neither of those two, you can give a smile, you can say hello, you can give some kindness. There's all sorts of ways that we can help the poor and needy. I've been talking to Patricia Said Adams, author of a powerful book called Called to Help the Poor and Needy. It's available on Amazon. You can download it on Kindle. You can get a physical copy and read it the old-fashioned way, which is what I suggest. And we've had a delightful conversation, a wide-ranging conversation about humanity and helping others. Pat, thank you so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Oh, Logan, thank you for having me. I really appreciate the discussion. It was very interesting.
My pleasure. I enjoyed it as well. I've learned a lot. I think our viewers have some fuel for thought, and those are all good things. To our viewers at home, I'd like to thank you for your time this time. Until next time on Spotlight.